Welcome back to Andy and Anna Talks, where we explore the psychology, culture, and quiet chaos of modern life, one honest conversation at a time. And speaking of quiet chaos, gosh, how many of us have, stared down a deadline knowing exactly what we should be doing, yet somehow find ourselves, I don't know, alphabetizing our bookshelves or suddenly needing tea?
Procrastination.
Yeah.
Yeah, the universal dance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Intention versus inaction. It's something we can pretty much all relate to, that gap between what we plan and, well, what actually happens.
Exactly. And today, we're not just like shaking our fists at our own willpower or lack thereof. We're diving deep, really trying to get into the why behind procrastination, looking at its real impact, and crucially finding some strategies that might actually help us get moving.
Yeah, because it's so easy to just write it off as, you know, simple laziness or
Yeah.
maybe bad time management. But the reality is often much more complex, isn't it? There are these psychological roots that go way beyond just a lack of discipline. We're talking about things like underlying fears, maybe chasing a perfect outcome that's frankly often unattainable, and even how we see ourselves, our identity, in relation to the tasks we keep putting off.
Right. So if you've ever felt that almost magnetic pull towards anything but the really important thing you know you need to do, maybe you're folding laundry for the third time, or maybe you suddenly just have to learn the entire history of paper clips right now,
Yep.
then yeah, this deep dive is definitely for you. We're kind of in this together, trying to understand it and maybe find a gentler way through this very, very human experience.
Okay, so let's start with what actually is procrastination. We need a clear definition, right? It isn't just delaying something. It's the intentional postponement. You intend to do it, but you put it off.
Hmm.
And crucially, you do this despite knowing there could be negative consequences. That awareness piece is key.
Right. So it's different from deciding, okay, I need a break, or strategically prioritizing task A over task B. Procrastination usually comes with that little nagging feeling, that undercurrent of guilt, yeah. That voice saying, you know you should be doing that thing.
Exactly. Think of it like this. One part of your brain knows exactly what needs doing, the report, the call, that tricky conversation. But then another part, it sort of actively scans for distractions. Maybe the spice rack needs another look. Or,
Mhm.
is the fridge still working?
Aha, yes. The fridge check, a classic. It's almost irrational when you think about it like that, isn't it? We knowingly act against our own best interests, like a voluntary delay where you fully expect to feel worse later, which
No.
sounds a bit mad when you say it out loud.
It does sound bizarre, but it is remarkably a super common human behavior.
Mm.
It's not really a sign you're fundamentally flawed, but it's actually a window into some pretty interesting, deeper psychological stuff going on.
Okay, that's actually reassuring. We're not just inherently lazy. Phew. So if it's not laziness, what is happening in our heads when we do this?
Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. The latest thinking, increasingly, is that procrastination isn't primarily about time management issues. It's actually much more about emotional regulation.
Emotional regulation.
Okay.
So we're putting things off not because we can't manage a schedule, but because we're trying to manage our feelings about the tasks.
Precisely. We're trying to avoid the discomfort associated with it.
Ah, okay. So the task itself might bring up feelings of what? Stress? Anxiety? Maybe it's just incredibly boring. Or feeling like we're not up to it.
Exactly that. Think about the kinds of tasks you tend to put off. Very often, they're the ones that trigger some kind of negative feeling. Maybe the task just feels huge, overwhelming, sparks a bit of fear, or maybe it carries that weight of potential judgment from others, which leads to a fear of failure.
That fear of failure makes total sense. But you also mentioned fear of success. That sounds a bit paradoxical. How does that work?
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, subconsciously, we resist succeeding because we anticipate the changes it might bring. Maybe more responsibility, higher expectations next time, perhaps a shift in relationships, or even how we see ourselves. It's kind of a fear of the unknown consequences of doing well.
Wow. Okay. That's a complex one. And then there's that classic excuse, waiting for the right mood to hit. Like motivation is some magical fairy dust that'll just descend upon us if we wait long enough.
Oh, absolutely. We
Yeah.
tell ourselves, I'll start when I feel more inspired, or I just need to be less stressed first.
Hmm. But of course, that perfect moment rarely just arrives, does it? And meanwhile, the task just sits there. And we definitely need to talk about perfectionism here too.
Well, yes, perfectionism, where the desire to do something absolutely flawlessly actually stops you from starting at all. That all or nothing thinking.
It can be such a powerful inhibitor, yeah. The fear of not meeting those impossibly high standards we set for ourselves. It can be so paralyzing that we just choose inaction instead. We don't even begin. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? The very thing we think is a positive trait, striving for excellence, can actually be the thing that completely holds us back. So, thinking about our own lives, maybe for you listening too, what kinds of tasks tend to really trigger this avoidance spiral for us?
Well, for a lot of people, it's those big kind of fuzzy, unstructured projects, the ones that feel really amorphous and daunting, or tasks that just require a lot of sustained focus, that deep mental energy. What comes up for you?
Oh, definitely anything involving complex paperwork. My brain just wants to check out immediately. Tax forms are my nemesis. And also, yeah, those really open-ended creative things where the
Yeah.
possibilities feel endless, but figuring out where to even start, it feels impossible. My internal compass just spins and spins.
For me, I find I really procrastinate on emails that need a thoughtful, nuanced response. It's weird. I'll like draft a first sentence, maybe feel like I've hit a bit of a wall, and then suddenly the urge to reorganize my entire digital filing system becomes overwhelming. It's such a classic avoidance loop.
That loop is so real. And the longer we put something off, the bigger and scarier it seems to get in our heads, right? Like the actual task itself hasn't changed, but our perception of it just warps and grows monstrous.
Precisely. The story we tell ourselves about the task gets worse and worse. It goes from being just an item on a list to this monumental obstacle. And then, as the deadline gets closer or the consequences start to feel more real, another layer gets piled on. Shame.
Ugh, yes, that feeling of, why can't I just do this? What is wrong with me? It's so counterproductive. Because that self-criticism just makes you want to avoid the task and the feeling even more.
It really creates this nasty, self-reinforcing negative cycle. The more we procrastinate, the worse we feel about ourselves, which ironically makes us even less likely to actually start.
Hmm.
But understanding that cycle, seeing it for what it is, that's really the first step towards maybe breaking out of it. Now, it's also interesting, psychologists have actually identified different patterns, or you could say styles of procrastination.
Oh, really? Like different flavors of putting things off. Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, think of them as sort of common tendencies or the underlying reasons why someone procrastinates. So one type is the perfectionist, which we've touched on. They delay starting because they're afraid the outcome won't meet their own often unrealistic high standards.
Okay, that makes sense. Avoidance due to fear of imperfection. Got it.
Then there's the dreamer. This is someone who, loves the initial brainstorming phase, all the exciting ideas and possibilities, but then they really struggle with the practical side, the actual implementation and seeing it through the boring bits.
The follow-through problem, yes. Okay, who's next?
Next up is the avoider. Their main driver is trying to steer clear of potential judgment or criticism or failure. Procrastination is basically a form of self-protection for them.
Right. If you don't finish it or do it well, maybe people won't judge you as harshly or something. Okay. I think I know a few of those. Maybe I am one sometimes. What about the crisis maker? That one sounds potentially familiar too.
Huh. Yes, this is the person who seems to almost thrive on that last-minute pressure. They often genuinely believe they work better under pressure
Yeah.
and will intentionally or semi-intentionally delay things until that adrenaline finally kicks in.
Okay, yeah. Guilty as charged, definitely on occasion. Puts self under unnecessary stress. And the last one.
The fifth common type is the busy procrastinator. This is someone who avoids the really important, maybe difficult tasks by filling their day with lots of other, less critical activities. They look and feel productive, but they're actually sidestepping the things that truly matter most. Cleaning the desk instead of writing the proposal, maybe.
Wow. Okay, seeing them laid out like that,
Yeah.
it really does make it easier to spot some of those tendencies, maybe in ourselves or people we know. And it's helpful to realize it's not just this one uniform failing, but that there can be different drivers underneath it all.
Absolutely. And understanding your own particular style,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe blend of styles, can be super valuable because then you can start thinking about more targeted strategies,
agree.
right? Instead of just trying to rely on sheer willpower, which, let's be honest, often isn't enough on its own. So, yeah, let's shift gears. Let's talk about what actually works. How can we start to interrupt these patterns and actually get things done?
Okay, practical stuff. Love it. First off, that idea of breaking down huge, overwhelming tasks into tiny, almost ridiculously small micro steps, that seems key. Like, write the whole report feels massive, but maybe just open the document and type one sentence. That feels actually doable.
Yes. That initial hurdle, that first step is often the hardest part. By making the entry point incredibly low stakes, you massively reduce that mental resistance. And momentum is such a powerful thing, isn't it? Once you actually get started, even just a tiny bit, it's often much easier to keep going.
Totally. And another great tactic is the 5-minute rule. Have you tried that? You just tell yourself, okay, I only have to work on this dreaded thing for 5 minutes. That's it. Often what happens is once you're actually engaged for that short burst, you find it's not so bad and you just keep going. It's about tricking yourself over that initial inertia.
Exactly. It lowers the barrier to entry so much.
Yeah.
And another thing we can do is actively try to make procrastination less appealing, less easy. So if your phone is your main escape route, maybe use app blockers or physically put it in another room while you need to focus. Basically, create an environment that actually supports the behavior you want to be doing. Make the path of least resistance the productive path.
Good point. Make the desirable action easier and the undesirable one harder. What about using other people? External accountability.
Oh, that can be huge.
Yeah.
Simply telling a friend your goal, or setting a firm deadline with someone else who's expecting it, or even using things like virtual co-working spaces online. Just knowing someone else is sort of checking in or expecting something can be a really powerful nudge.
It adds that little bit of social pressure in a good way. And what about the way we talk to ourselves about the task?
Ah, yes, our internal dialogue. That's incredibly powerful too. We can try consciously shifting our self-talk. So instead of thinking, ugh, I have to do this boring thing, try reframing it. Maybe I choose to do this because it aligns with my goal of X, or I choose to do this because finishing it will feel good, help someone be important for Y.
That's a subtle shift, but it really changes the feeling, doesn't it? From being a victim of your to-do list to feeling like you have some agency, some choice in the matter. You're connecting it back to a reason that actually matters to you. Okay, so those are some really practical strategies. But you mentioned earlier there might be other less obvious things going on, underlying factors.
That's right. We often focus just on the task itself or our psychology around it. But other things like, are you getting enough sleep? What are your overall stress levels like? Even something called decision fatigue. These can all play a pretty significant role in whether we procrastinate or not.
Absolutely. Sleep is a big one. If you're constantly exhausted, your brain's resources are just depleted. It makes it so much harder to focus, to resist distractions, to exert self-control. It's no wonder avoidance kicks in when your brain is basically running on empty fumes.
Totally. And similarly, chronic stress. When you're feeling constantly overwhelmed by pressure, the very thought of tackling another demanding task can just feel unbearable. Avoidance becomes a coping mechanism.
And decision fatigue, that's something we probably don't think about enough. Just the sheer number of choices we have to make all day, big and small. It wears down our mental energy for making more decisions, including the crucial decision to actually start a task.
Yeah, that cognitive load builds up. And sometimes, honestly, procrastination isn't a sign of laziness or poor discipline at all. Sometimes it's actually a symptom of burnout. If you're feeling completely emotionally and mentally drained, putting things off might just be your body and mind screaming, I need a break. I need rest.
That's such an important point. So in those cases, listening to that signal and actually prioritizing rest and recovery, that could be the most productive thing you can do in the long run. It's not avoidance, it's self-preservation.
Exactly. Rest can be a form of productive action when you're depleted.
Which leads nicely into the importance of self-compassion in all of this, because beating yourself up for procrastinating, it's almost guaranteed to backfire.
Oh, absolutely guaranteed. It just adds another layer of negative emotion to the whole situation. And there's actually research suggesting that when people treat themselves with more kindness and understanding after they've procrastinated, they're actually more likely to do better next time, less likely to procrastinate again on similar tasks.
Wow, really? So being hard on yourself actually makes it worse?
It seems so. That harsh self-criticism just fuels the shame and avoidance cycle we talked about. Self-compassion helps break it.
Okay, that's huge. And mindfulness could be a useful tool here too, right? Not in some like super intense meditation way necessarily, but just in the sense of noticing the urge.
Exactly. Just practicing, observing that urge to procrastinate when it arises without immediately judging yourself for it. Maybe just acknowledging, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious about this task, and my go-to reaction is wanting to check social media. Just noticing it, non-judgmentally.
Creating that little bit of space between the feeling, the urge, and your action.
Yes. That pause, that space, however brief, that's where your power lies. That's where you can make a conscious choice about what to do next rather than just reacting automatically. Mindfulness helps you find and widen that space.
So we've taught strategies, hidden causes, self-compassion. Looking bigger picture now, what about more profound, maybe longer-term shifts in how we approach this whole procrastination thing?
Yeah, I think it often comes down to really connecting with the deeper purpose or value behind the tasks we tend to avoid. asking ourselves, why does this actually matter?
Hmm.
To me, to others.
Right. Moving beyond just the task itself and linking it to your personal values, maybe your bigger roles in life or work. So maybe that boring report isn't just about data entry. Maybe it's about contributing your expertise or helping your team succeed or taking a step towards a career goal, finding that bigger why.
Exactly. That why provides a much more sustainable and meaningful source of motivation than just willpower or the fear of deadlines. Purpose really does act as a powerful compass, guiding you through the discomfort. And another really crucial long-term shift, I think, is working on detaching your sense of self-worth from achieving perfect outcomes all the time.
Oh, that's so important, isn't it? Because when we feel like our value as a human being somehow hinges on doing everything perfectly, the fear of falling short becomes absolutely immense. And procrastination feels like a safe shield against that potential failure or imperfection.
Precisely. So consciously giving yourself permission to just show up, to make progress, even if it's imperfect progress, that's key. It's about shifting the focus to valuing the effort, the learning, the process itself, rather than only valuing the flawless final result.
Okay, so if you've been listening to this deep dive, maybe while simultaneously avoiding something else important, please know this. You are definitely not alone in this. You're not fundamentally flawed, and you are certainly not just lazy.
Not at all. Procrastination is just a deeply, deeply human pattern. It's something so many of us grapple with. But the good news is, it is a pattern. And patterns can be understood, they can be interrupted, and with awareness, the right strategies, and a good dose of self-compassion, they can gradually be rewritten.
You really don't need to conquer everything today or even this week. Maybe just consider taking one small step. Maybe it's setting that timer for just 5 minutes. Maybe it's simply identifying the very, very first tiny action you could take on that thing you're avoiding.
That first step is often all it takes to get the ball rolling. The momentum will follow. And as you start to move forward, just try to remember the inherent capabilities and strengths you already possess. You can do this.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive on Andy and Anna talks. If you found this conversation helpful, maybe think about sharing it with someone else you know who might be wrestling with procrastination too. We're really all navigating this stuff together.
We certainly are. We'll be back with another conversation soon. Until then, maybe take a deep breath. And then just take that next step, however small it might feel.